Hi everybody, this is Warren Herman. Today what we're going to do is we're going to discuss some methods of prayer that I believe can be helpful to us in finding peace inside of our minds. Often our minds are not at peace, and there are certain things we wish were resolved. There are different fears, different temptations, all different things that agitate us in our lives, and we have to find a way in order to deal with these things. So one of the things that we can do is we can attempt to push things away, but that doesn't work. Or we could just stop trying to live a spiritual life, and that doesn't work either. But one of the things that we can do otherwise is kind of a reformed version of a technique that you can find actually in Buddhist meditation. In some of the Buddhist type of meditations, there is a technique of, when thinking arises in the mind, to simply label the thinking, to kind of say to yourself, thinking, and to kind of label it or package it, so to speak. And this enables the thinking to become kind of, enables there to be a kind of distance between oneself and the thinking. This kind of a technique can easily be brought into the proper context of the Christian life. And in a way, it can really benefit us because it can give us a way of being present to those things that make us afraid. One of the most terrible things of the spiritual life is when we're afraid of temptations. This makes them all the more troublesome and worse, and kind of creates actually a much more devastating effect of them, because then there's a fear that gets attached to them and amplifies them. So what we need to do is we need to have a way of comforting our own mind. And I like to call this method spray foam prayer. And so I'm going to explain this silly method, which can actually be very helpful to you if you try it. One of the things that you may see in a house is this kind of spray foam insulation that can kind of be sprayed into things and kind of coat things. And basically what I'm advocating in this video is that we coat our temptations and the agitations with prayer. In this way, these temptations and agitations become things that we don't run away from anymore. Because if we're running away from these different things, then what's going to happen is if we're running away, we're going to continue this cycle of amplifying this type of stimuli, rather than comforting ourselves so these parts of our brain can settle down. So here's how it works. It's actually very simple. All you really need to do is to observe what your mind is doing. This can be difficult if you're not trained to do it, because what happens is it seems like you're kind of giving into things. So it's actually easier to do if you employ thoughtful or prayerful methods. Because what you're kind of doing is you can kind of begin with a watchful method. So a watchful method is just you're seeing the thoughts come up. And watchfulness is it's almost like you have something that's stinky in your mind and you wrap it in cellophane. That's what watchfulness is like. So you're kind of looking at the effects of the temptation. You're kind of dispassionately looking at it. This is what they say in the Philokalia, or in the Eastern tradition, when they say to survey the thoughts is to calm them. And you can survey the thoughts in a few different ways. You could survey them watchfully, thoughtfully, or prayerfully. And so there's this way in which when you have you can kind of label it. You can kind of label and say, okay, and this is similar to what I was saying at the beginning with that kind of stolen thing from the Buddhists, which is this idea of kind of labeling, okay, thinking. You can kind of have this way in which you label the thought and say, oh, that's a disturbance. You're just kind of labeling it, and that's helping you stay watchful, and it's helping you hold it, and helping you be present to it, helping you calm it down, because you're looking at the things that are arising in your mind not as something to get rid of, but as something that you're supposed to be compassionate towards, something that you're supposed to be aware of, something that you're supposed to be with. And that's the only way to get this to shut down, I think. And then you could say to yourself, And if you're really agitated, you kind of almost, the reason why I'm calling it spray foam prayer is like you're kind of coating it. You're saying, oh, I'm really agitated that this thought is in my mind and I feel it in my head and my brain is kind of tightening up and I'm really getting and Jesus, I'm getting like a little bit tense about this. And you're kind of like spraying that prayer onto, you're coating the disturbance in prayer. So it's almost like you're saying the prayers onto the disturbing stimuli that's arising in the mind, making kind of like a way of containing it in your psyche. And so this, and then what happens is then it can all of a sudden kind of relax. But the thing is, the goal of this is not to achieve a resolution. The goal is connection in yourself. And resolution proceeds from connection. But once you're trying to get it to resolve, I want this disturbing stimuli, or this temptation, this problem, this confusion, this dilemma, this intellectual problem. Once you want it to go away, it can't fully be resolved. But if you stay with this disturbance, especially like a temptation or something like that, if you encase it in this prayer, you can eventually find this resolution. Because really, what you're looking for is this connection, the need to have it, like, to be present with it. And to know that you don't have to have it go away in order for you to be safe. And then once that happens, once you bring that safety to what feels unsafe, then you can find that freedom without going crazy inside your own mind. So this is something that I think can be really helpful. So again, this is spray foam prayer, and you practice it. You see something in your mind that's disturbing you. You say, okay, there's that thing, there's that thought over there, Jesus, okay, and then it's feeling like this. And you're almost using the thought as a way of describing it and being aware of it. And you have to, I think it's good to understand it in this context of, it's like a prayerfulness that builds upon a thoughtfulness that builds upon a watchfulness. It's like the whole point of this is a watchful containing of the thought. And so that's really an important way of understanding it, because like, it's not like you're just like freaking out about it or talking to yourself about it. It's like you're allowing the thoughts. You're allowing the thoughts and the prayers to help you be aware and stay present to the thought. And you also can do something that I think is very helpful, which is to ask Jesus or Mary to be present to the thought. Sometimes something is so scary, we have to kind of outsource the awareness and say, hey, Jesus, hold this for me. Hold this for me. And look at this. Mary, look at this for me. Look at this disturbance. And what that can do is it can allow us to stop flinching. Because a lot of times we're trying not to flinch at things that are tempting or stuff like that. And it's creating a kind of a boomerang effect in the psyche where those things are now getting amplified because they're seen as important. And so in order to get around that, you may want to do that thing of outsourcing the awareness as part of this prayerful containing of stimuli. Because it's like, okay, Jesus, look at that for me. Hold that for me. Be with that. And that's a very safe and good way of looking at a temptation. So letting Jesus hold it. So God is holding it for you, so you don't get afraid of it and try to like go away from it, because you don't want to turn away in fear, because then it amplifies it. So that's kind of a way, I think, of working with our minds in this way.